Okay, in this video, I'm just going to talk about how we can do this kind of layout without using columns. So we're using flex properties to lay out each widget as a column in a proportional way. So I'm just going to zoom in on this a little bit so it makes a bit more sense. If I look at this widget here, for example, my advanced CSS, and I've got that as flex grow 6. If I make that 2, it's only slightly bigger than the others. If I make it 3, it's bigger again. If I make it 1, it's the same size as the others. So we can change the proportions between these by changing this flex grow property. So I'm going to delete this and start again to show you how this actually works. Before I do, just a discussion around why you would do this. A couple of things. One is that when you use columns instead of just using widgets and using flex properties, it adds a lot more DOM elements, so your DOM size gets larger, which is not good for page speed, particularly with the measurement tools and the things like PSI, which I'm not overly fussed with, but Google Core Metrics can affect that. So the dev version of Elementor at the moment, they have a new concept which is containers, which are a flex container, and then they give you access to a lot of the flex properties from the UI. From what I've seen so far, what that does, it creates a single DOM element. It sets the display to flex, and then you've got a lot of properties on how you lay out widgets, etc. within that container. So it reduces the DOM elements, gives you a lot more control over layout. That's not available yet, but there is some flex properties that you can use, and Elementor layouts and widgets already use flex. It's just not as accessible as what you might see in the new dev version. So I'm going to show you a start here. So I'm going to create a single section with a single column. Give some padding on the top and bottom so we can see that a little bit better. I'm going to grab a pricing widget, just a standard Elementor pricing table widget, and chuck that in there. And by default, that is 100% wide. So what I want to do here is a very, very simple change to this, and unfortunately you can't do it from the UI, so we do need custom CSS for this. And all I'm going to do is set the custom CSS for this selector. So flex grow of 1. Okay, now if I duplicate this, we've got 2 sitting on top of each other, which is not what we want. So let's just get rid of that. Come back to here and go to our, where are we? Our positioning. And we want to set the width to auto, inline auto. Why didn't that work? And we want to set it on mobile to be, on tablet to be full width. So we get the full width of it. Try that now. If I duplicate that, there we go. So the reason that we're getting this across now is because we've set the width to auto, and then we've set the flex grow to 1. So I'm going to duplicate that one more time, and there we go. They've all got a flex grow of 1, which means that they're all going to scale by the same amount to fill up the parent container. Now, Elementor already sets the column display to flex, so we don't have to do anything flash there. It's already done by default. So all we need to do is set the flex grow on these widgets. Now, let's say we want this one to be a bit wider than those. So actually, let's pick the middle one. So we go to the middle one, and let's say we want that to be slightly wider. So in the custom CSS, we can say flex grow of 2. See, now that's a bit wider than the other 2. Let's make it a flex grow of 3. Wider again, these two are not so wide. Now, one thing is, for pricing tables, this isn't going to work for us because they're butted right up against each other. So what we need to do is set some margin on these ones. So I'm going to go to the first widget. I'm going to set some margin right of 5. Go to the second widget and set the margin right of 5. Okay, now we see a problem here. We've got the ribbon is now aligning to the right because we've got a margin on the side of that, so the edge of that is right aligned to 0. So let's have a look at that. If we look at this ribbon, we look at the CSS for it. Where is it? The price table ribbon. So we've got a right align of 0. So that's going to go right to the edge, including that margin. We want that to be 5 pixels from the right because we've got a 5 pixel margin. So what we need to do is create a class. So I've already done this. I'm just going to show you in the site settings. In the site settings here, I've created a class called ribbon right 5 and then target the price table ribbon, which is that ribbon element, and give it a right of 5. So all I have to do now is go to this widget and give that class of ribbon right 5. And that's moved that across. So I'm just going to copy that class, go to this one, and I'm going to add that class there. Okay, actually I'm just going to go back to that rule and just show you something with that rule. So what I wanted to do is make sure that when we apply that, it sets the right to 5. I'm going to come back to this and I'm going to put a media query around that because when we go to 100%, we don't want that to be 5 from the right. I'll come back to that. So that's pretty straightforward. So if I update that and view this page, there we go. So we've got a 5 pixel margin in there. If I shrink that, shrink this, it's all proportional, and then it drops to 100%. Okay? So that works pretty well. In fact, we don't have to do much here, but I can see here, we've got a small margin on the left, and we've got a bigger one on the right. So for consistency, we need to fix that. So what we're going to do is come back to this here. I'm going to go to our tablet view, which is where we go to 100%. And I'm going to take that and make that 0, margin of 0. Same as on the next one. I'll do that one. Yep. The next one, make that a margin of 0. So now we're shifting, so we've got the same amount of spacing on that side and that side. But now we see that the ribbon is 5 pixels off the edge. How do we fix that? Let's do a media query. So what we're going to tell you is when the media min width is the tablet breakpoint, so 767 pixels. Then we apply this here. Does that work? It's going to be max. No. Min width 767 px. Let's just check that. So that's working properly on that size. 12, I should say. Have a look here. Oh, it does work there. Okay, so it's just Elementor's not displaying it correctly. So these are lining up correctly to the side. We've got the same spacing on the left and right. Okay, So that's pretty simple, isn't it? Now, let's come back here and let's say we add another one of these. If I duplicate that, it's just going to redistribute the widths based on, this is a 1, that's a 1, that's a 1, so there's 3. And what did we make this one? That's a 3 there. So I'm not exactly sure how it calculates these widths, but it's quite simple where if you want that to be only slightly bigger, you might make it a 2. You can see it's just slightly bigger. When they're all the same, you make that a 1. If you want it to be much bigger, make it a 5. And that shrinks the others. Okay, so I'm going to make that a 3 again. Now what we're seeing here is we don't have the right margin there. So let's select that as a 5. We're going to have to add that class again to the ribbon right. There's plenty of ways you can do this. You can create more of a global class. Like I could put a class up here on the section for this and then apply this right 5 on everything except for the last element. But that is a really good way of aligning everything, keeping it aligned. Works. We've got a breakpoint higher up, which is why that's not working. For our tablet, it is 1024. The 1024 is the point we should be looking at. So that's why this is messed up. So let's have a look at that. Yeah, so 1024. There you go. So the ribbon's lining up correctly to the side of these ones that's got the margin on it. Even when it goes to 100%. And obviously with these, you would also put some padding on the bottom, so margin on the bottom, I should say. So when you're at a breakpoint like this, you might add, say, a margin on the bottom of, I don't know, 10. Whoops. Say 10 on the bottom of that. 10. Did it again. Unlink first, 10. And the last one, margin bottom of 10, just to separate them. Probably can't see because this is a bit of a very light grey at the moment. So now if I look at this, when it goes to 100%, I've got a little bit of a gap. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but this is a very light grey. Then there's a gap between the next one. So you can make that whatever you like. So I think that's a really cool way. This is just an example with the pricing widget, but this could be anything. So it could be an icon box. So I'm going to do that actually. Look, I'm going to go back to here. And I'm going to delete everything that is here. I'm going to add a new column. And I'm going to add an icon box or a service box. So let's have a look here. Say, here we go, a flip box maybe, or an image box. Let's go with a flip box. So that's like that. All right, so what we want to do is we want to go to advanced and set the positioning to inline auto. Go to our mobile, sorry, our tablet breakpoint, set that to full width. And go back to our custom CSS and set the selector to flex. Grow of 1. Okay, and let's just duplicate that. That's exactly the same thing. So if we want 2 of those, we can just do that. Let's put some margin on the right of this one. I'll say 5 pixels. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Now we've got 2 of those. Let's duplicate this again. Now we've got 3 of those. We want the center one to be a little bit bigger. Go to our CSS and we'll set the flex grow to 2. And now that one's bigger than these 2. So there we go. So I'll just take that through the breakpoints. There we go. So it scales. All 3 are scaling with a relative amount. We still end up with the same 5 pixel gap in between them until we get to our tablet breakpoint where they go to 100%. So in my view, that's a lot better way of doing it than using columns. Less DOM elements, more control over the flexibility of those columns in effect. And there's a lot more you can do with Flex. I'm just showing you the basics, but you can also set fixed percentage sizing and set the space between. I prefer this method because it keeps this gap between them the same, regardless of what the size of the column in effect is scaled to. It's just a nicer way of doing it, I think, and very, very simple. And yeah, so hopefully you get some value out of that.